So Jim, this happens every year and it's like clockwork. When spring turns into summer, we begin to see these temperatures spike and then we see these rolling blackouts. Why is this and what are the risks this season as we head into summer?
Well, it's not a story we're hearing for the first time, but it looks even worse this year. And this assessment that came out today says 2/3 of the country is at risk for outages this summer when there are extreme heat events. And the reason it's happening is pretty simple. We're using more electricity, but we're closing power plants at the same time. So when demand's going up and supply's going down, that causes reliability problems and the potential for outages.
All right, so you're saying 2/3 of the country are vulnerable. What are the areas that are going to be affected?
You know, it's most of the country throughout the West, Midwest. The areas that maybe are doing better are the Southeast, according to this report. But listen, any place could have an incident. I'm here to tell you, last winter we had outages in areas that weren't predicted to be at highest risk. So I think this is a national problem in terms of, like I said, growing demand in terms of electricity needs, and we're shutting down power plants without replacing them. And that's a trend that we just can't continue. It's the old saying, when you find yourself in a hole, the first step is stop digging deeper. And we got to take the shovel away from policymakers that keep making this situation worse.
So why are we shutting down those power plants, number one? And number two, what needs to happen in order to correct this problem? I mean, how can the United States make a grid that is consistently reliable so that we don't always experience these rolling blackouts?
We need to make sure we're not forcing premature closure of power plants that have useful life left if we can't replace it. There are a number of steps we could take. Number one, you can't build anything new in this country. Permitting is so hard to permit and site a new facility, whether it's electric power plant, whether it's transmission lines to bring electricity from elsewhere. It's really hard to build new assets in this country. That's a policy issue. We have the EPA coming out with more and more proposed regulations that are going to close more of these always available power plants. That's not helpful if you're looking for reliability. So there are steps we can take to stop this trend. Over time, we can build new generation, but it's not meeting the demands we have today.
Right, because the EPA is going to point to greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions. What are some of the challenges that we see when it comes to switching over to renewable energy? I mean, why isn't the grid completely renewable? Because wind and solar power have been around for some time now.
Sure, and wind and solar power can play an important role and be valuable as part of an energy mix, but the wind doesn't blow 24 hours a day and the sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day. That sounds really obvious, but we need to remember that. We need power plants that are always available 24/7, 365 to meet our demands. And by the way, if you want to reduce greenhouse gases overall, the electrification of the rest of the economy, like more electric vehicles, more heat pumps, that is going to reduce greenhouse gas, but all those things need electricity to work. So the electric grid needs to be reliable and it has to have the capacity to meet all these future electrification needs.
Just so people understand, how dependent is the United States right now on fossil fuels when it comes to the electricity sector?
Well, clearly we're using less and less fossil fuels than in the past in our electric sector. Renewables have grown. Of course, nuclear represents about 1/5 of our electric generation in this country, and that's carbon-free as well. But we've shifted a lot from coal to natural gas as a nationwide. But the coal plants that exist and the natural gas plants that exist today, they're always available. You can run them 24 hours a day, and they're very important in terms of reliability to the grid.
And Jim, when it comes to the grid, how long do you think it's going to take before renewable energy takes over as the main source?
Look, until you can find a way to, in large quantities, store electricity in batteries that's generated from renewable resources, you're going to need something besides renewable energy resources to power the grid 24/7. There are technological hurdles that are going to have to be overcome. That technology does not exist in a viable way today. It may in the future at some point, but let's not make decisions hoping that's going to happen, because hope, this has been said a lot, hope is not a good strategy. You need to be thoughtful about where you're going as a country, and renewable energy, as I said, it can be an important part of our electric grid in terms of supply, but we can't go full scale there when you don't have the ability to use it 24/7.
Right, and you're saying the infrastructure really doesn't exist to support it. So Jim Matheson,
Right.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Jim is the CEO of the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. Jim, thanks for stopping by.